In the meantime,
Is it like a vertigo type dizzy or?
it's just,
Oh,
I feel like my head is fuzzy, wonky, and sometimes it makes me feel like I have
like
to
hold on to things. And that's part of the side of
Yeah.
that.
And I'm very tired all the time. That's another one of the side effects is to,
Is it people next week?
I just need to lay down for a little while.
Right.
You want to see the chat going down the side, or do you want this bigger?
The chat pops up on the bottom of the screen right there when people chat, so. Yeah, no, it's
Not good.
just one of those things. I feel like I'm kind of getting used to it, so it feels like it's just kind of scary.
Yeah.
Like, am I supposed to get used to
So
feeling
then
dizzy
when
all the
you're
time?
not doing it, you're
I'll
gonna
be like,
what's missing something?
So there's a movie that we watched years ago called Joe versus the Volcano,
Okay.
and Tom Hanks plays this guy who works in this factory, and it's dimly lit. It's horrible, deplorable conditions, and he walks in like
Blue.
everybody's just all
Blue.
and he goes to the doctor because he's always sick. He's a hypochondriac.
Oh.
And his doctor tells him he has a brain cloud and that there's nothing that can be done for it. Well, the doctor is in cahoots with a guy who is looking for someone to do something for him that
Acknowledge him.
well, no, there's this island in the Pacific that he gets product from his company or whatever, and it's something going on there and they need to sacrifice someone, and he agrees to do it because he's going to die anyway.
Right.
You know, he's got a brain cloud, he's going to die. And it's a really funny movie, it really is, very cute, funny movie. I said to him, like, just like, is there something in there that's going to go on?
Right.
All the time.
Maybe
At least I don't have to work. Maybe it'll settle.
Yeah. Maybe it's just Thursday.
It's like,
And so you don't lose it because that adapter is actually kind of expensive.
I didn't want to know all of
No.
the side effects
Because then sometimes
I
it
would,
might.
so I just didn't look at them until.
Right? Because then it might be, I got that.
My friend Bev always reads all of the side
I don't
effects.
remember that stuff.
I don't read them at
I
all.
don't either. It's like, nah, I don't want to know about it.
I'm going out of here.
Well, welcome to Adult Sunday School class at Crossroads Bible Church. Good to be back with you guys again, even though it's electronically. We are ready to look at the last portion of the book of Daniel, and going to be looking at Daniel chapter 12, verses 5 to 13 today. Glad to have John back with me.
Thank
again.
you very much. Looks like it's just going to be a couple more weeks of this
Right?
before we have to peaceably assemble here.
Yeah. We're looking
If we
forward
don't
to
give
that.
the order, but
We are looking forward. If the mall can open up, right?
yes,
We can open
we
up.
could sell something like toilet paper here, and we could
We would be a
pull
mall.
it off. Yeah.
we would be a mall. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Very good. Well, I think we might as well jump right in. last week, I went a little long.
Yes,
This
yes.
is a watch. It's what people used to wear to tell time.
Let me get my phone out.
Okay. You tell me if I go over. We're shooting
Okay.
for 45 minutes.
And we missed it by about 45 minutes.
Missed
last
it
week.
by like 20 minutes last time, yeah, so. Okay. I heard about that one. Okay.
From your wife, or who'd you hear it from?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just a little bit of background for a second. You know what? Let me just read the first 4 verses of chapter 12 that lead up to this. At that time, Michael, the great prince who stands guard over the sons of your people, will arise, and there will be a time of distress such as never occurred since there was a nation until that time. And at that time, your people, everyone who is found written in the book, will be rescued. Many of those who sleep in the dust of the ground will awake, these to everlasting life, but the others to disgrace and everlasting contempt. Those who have insight will shine brightly like the brightness of the expanse of heaven, and those who lead the many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. But as for you, Daniel, conceal these words and seal up the book until the end of the time. Many will go back and forth, and knowledge will increase. That's where we left off last
Yes.
time. So, verse 5 then I, Daniel, looked, and behold, 2 others were standing, one on this bank of the river, and the other on that bank of the river. Do you remember where he's at? This has been a while. It was clear
I know.
back in chapter 10. That was like,
Jordan, Euphrates,
was there 2 good guesses? Or was there 2?
Tigris.
Yes, the Tigris.
Yes.
Yeah. Which is the fast river. The Tigris and Euphrates run through
Iraq.
Iraq.
Or
Yeah. Euphrates is kind of slow, meandering. The Tigris is the
All
faster
right.
one.
Just what, elevation?
Yeah, I think so. And just
Okay.
kind of the sort of terrain that it runs through. This photo is of the Tigris River, but it's quite a ways to the north where it's not quite so large.
Okay.
Probably by the time of Daniel, by the time it reached the place where Daniel was, which presumably would be relatively close to Babylon, the capital where he lived and served, it's much larger than this.
So this is the fast one.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I don't know. Around Babylon, it's not much smaller than like the Missouri River as it runs by Omaha. It's pretty good
The
size.
Missouri Canal.
The Missouri
Have they-
Canal.
Have they canaled it too, or?
Yeah, I think so. Do we have a visitor?
Yeah, the visitor.
Oh, my goodness.
I hear you guys tickles in your throat, and evidently Kris doesn't have a drink, so, I went to the store and I was trying to figure out, what I should get them, and the one
do
that
we
came to
have
mind
here?
for John was Rainbow Unicorn Bang Cola, so,
Oh, my
Oh.
goodness.
that smells
Oh
like
my
Rainbow
goodness.
Unicorn. And Kris, to
Does this
be
have
one that
caffeine in
is
it?
never to be outdone, got Birthday Cake Bash Cola.
Birthday. That sounds really good.
It could be. That one smelled really good, actually. So,
My
and
Like
to,
a, like
to
a
go,
smelter.
yeah, to go with that,
birthday cake bash.
I found a couple of shortcake sweets and treats. Is that, did I get the name right? Yeah, shortcake sweets and treats.
You're going to be
Does
on
these
such
cookies.
a sugar high by the time we finish up here. Right?
That I found you a couple cookies, and yes, I know this isn't social distancing being practiced
Wow.
well here, but
That actually tastes like birthday cake.
Wow.
does that taste
It
like
does.
unicorns, John? So enjoy.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
I don't want to say what I want to say.
That's probably just as well. Good job on the holding it in thing.
Well, those were
It just-
Heather's monster cookies too, by the way.
Monster cookies. Oh my goodness.
My favorites.
Thank you, Heather.
So this is, yes, thank you. Potent brain and body fuel.
Woo! I think you could use both of those about
Oh, I think it's lubricated too. Feel loosen it up. I mean, wound up by the time we're not even 5 minutes in.
Now I only got 40 minutes left.
All right. What about this
Okay,
fast
okay.
Tigris River? Come on.
Yeah. Where were we?
You're on both sides of the river.
Oh yeah. Funny thing,
Good.
the typical Hebrew word for river is nahar. This word used here is ye'or, which might indicate something a little different. That can also refer to like a smaller river, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Could be a canal, which was what you had mentioned just when you were talking about the
Yeah,
Missouri.
the book you gave me, it's Rio is the river.
is the Rio.
Yeah, you gave me
Okay.
a Spanish Bible.
Okay.
I'm going to use that.
The Rio. Hey, it might
Appreciate
come
that.
in handy. You speak a little Spanish.
Yeah, he was hoping halfway through I'd finally look at the Bible and realize it was Spanish.
What? I can't read this.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe you can.
Well, you gave it to me a little too early, I think.
Oh well.
Oh, man, this is...
My wife always gets on my case when I get birthday cake flavored ice cream.
Yeah?
I think she thinks it's redundant somehow, but this tastes just like that.
Can I have a sip? Is that social distancing?
You probably have a little.
Oh!
Isn't that good?
What does that taste? What
Yeah.
does that mean? Birthday cake?
It's like birthday cake.
Okay.
Okay, now we got 35 minutes. It's not that bad. It's okay. Birthday cake.
I don't know what it
batch.
tastes like.
It says natural flavors.
I mean, this is just
Okay.
liquid sugar, but...
Okay. I got to keep moving here, or
Okay.
viewers are going to start dropping off. So if you're
We could
curious-
wrestle.
yeah, it would not be worth it. You go back to Daniel chapter 10, where it introduces this whole thing. He's on the bank when he has this vision. At that point, he only sees one guy. And it doesn't say much about him other than, well, it does say quite a bit about him, but we're going to find out here that he's actually like above the water. It describes the way he looks and that kind
Okay.
of stuff. But there's only one guy, and in a second here we're gonna see a couple others. So in verse 6 then, well, he saw, in verse 5, he saw two others, one on this bank, one on the other bank. Have an artist's conception of what that might have looked like. Verse 6, the one said to the man dressed in linen, who was above the waters of the river, how long will it be until the end of these wonders? So we got a guy in the middle dressed in linen. Linen was a white cloth made out of flax, kind of an upper end sort of
Okay.
garment material, but typically fairly white, depending on how well it could be laundered and cleaned up. And it was not a good cloth for dyeing, coloring. Wool,
Thank you.
wool is easier to dye or to
Yeah,
color.
I don't think any fabric would be a good one to dye in.
Good one to dye in. That's not quite what I meant.
I know.
Okay, but this is just a modern guy reenactor in a linen.
You can always tell they're reenactors because they weigh about 50 more pounds than the
And it looks-
skinny guy back in history.
And it looks like an actual photograph. You're like, who was there? Got that picture. Okay, well, this is an actual roll of linen from just a little bit before the time of Daniel, a couple centuries before that. So, just an example. You can tell it's a very finely woven material. It's not rough like sackcloth or something. It's very, very fine. Anyway, so he asks this question, how long will it be until the end of these wonders? Now, of course, we read the last few verses that led up into this. And that's the natural question that would come to my mind anyway. And I mean, I think from Daniel's perspective, is this going to happen in my lifetime? Like,
A question
How
I
long-
hear quite often
how
now.
long do we have to wait, right? We do. And he gets an answer, but I don't think it's, if he was wondering the same thing I was wondering, like, is it going to happen in my lifetime, or, that kind of how long? The answer's not going to be satisfactory for him. But it's the question I would have asked as well. So, verse 7, I heard the man dressed in linen who was above the waters of the river, and he raised his right hand and his left hand toward heaven and swore by him who lives forever that it would be for a time, times, and half a time. And as soon as they finish shattering the power of the holy people, all these events will be completed. How long is a time, times, and half a time?
Oh, 3.5 years is what people always say.
At a minimum, we can say 3.5 times, right?
Yeah. Swore by the king who lives forever. Remember when he got out of the lion's den, he said, "O king, live forever." I don't know.
I suspect it was a different one that the angel
Yes,
said.
yes. But it's just part of his verbiage, it sounds,
Yeah.
it sounds like.
Yeah, no, that's true. We have heard this phrase before. A time, times, and half a time. In fact, it's interesting that the interconnections that we have. Why did I put it there? There you have the Tigris River, not too far from Babylon. It's about 35 miles
Okay.
from Babylon. And you can tell it would be a little bit difficult to, not difficult to see across, but difficult to talk across. I mean, that's a pretty good sized river there. You see the little houses?
Oh, okay. That gives you a little more perspective.
Yeah.
You could yell.
There's some
But,
houses.
yeah.
There's a little house out on the sandbar. There's some houses over here. Yeah, you could. But not easy conversation.
No.
So, this is a late Roman inscription. You know why the guy's got his hands up?
He's French? No. Sorry. Sorry.
He's not a Frenchie looking at the Germans. That's the attitude of prayer
Okay.
in the Roman culture, and that got picked up within Christianity.
Okay.
What do? Probably our most common thing, if we want to represent prayer, is hands together somehow. But their stance was arms, elbows bent, and hands up, kind of like this. Not totally up in the air, but that's what he's doing there.
See that a lot of that in the charismatic.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yep. Pushing it back. That kind of stuff. Okay. So here's our text for Daniel 12, verse 11. I got the wrong verse in there. Sorry about that.
We're on verse 6,
Yeah,
7.
verse 7. I got the right text in there,
There you go.
but I got the wrong reference. For a time, times, and half a time. And I just want to compare this with a couple others. If we ran back to Daniel chapter 7, the creature, beast, Antichrist, whoever, will speak out against the Most High and wear down the saints of the Highest One, intend to make alterations in times and in law. They will be given into his hand for a time, times, and half a time.
Okay.
So there's this period of time when the anti-God person has control, has free reign, and it's described in this way, 3.5 time.
Okay.
We have a link in Revelation chapter 12, verse
I
14.
figured we did.
The two wings of the great eagle were given to the woman, a representation of Israel, in order that she might fly into the wilderness to her place where she was nourished for a time and times and a half a time from the presence of the serpent who was pursuing her, chasing
Okay.
her. So we have that connection, the exact same verbiage, but occurring a couple times in Daniel and then also in Revelation, speaking of the end times. It gets more interesting in Revelation, and okay, so we were just looking at 12:14. In 12:5, we have a description of the same thing. The woman fled into the wilderness where she had a place prepared by God, so that there she might be nourished for 1,260 days.
3.5 years.
3.5 years, stated differently. Now, this is assuming that a month is 30 days and 12 months a year. It's not the Gregorian calendar. But saying the same thing, same people involved, but instead of a time times and half a time, 1,260 days. In Revelation 11, 2-3, John and his angelic companion are measuring stuff out around the heavenly city. And the angel tells them, leave out the court that's outside of the temple, don't measure it, for it's been given to the nations. They'll tread underfoot the holy city for 42 months, and I'll grant authority to my two witnesses, and they will prophesy for 1,260 days, clothed in sackcloth. So there we have a connection between the time times and half a time, 1,260 days, and 42 months. And of course, 42 months of 30 days each is 1,260.
Of course.
And they're all talking about, from the context, pretty much the same time period. Reference to the same thing. Revelation 13:5, there was given to him a mouth speaking arrogant words and blasphemies and the authority to act, which sounds just like what we read in Daniel. For 42 months, that was given to him.
Okay.
So we have the phrase a time, times, and half a time could be pretty enigmatic by itself. Like, is that weeks? Is that years? What is that? But when you take all these interconnections together, which I haven't taken much time to lay out the context of each one.
Scripture answering scripture.
Yeah. It seems like we have a reference to the same thing multiple times in different ways. And some of them, I mean, you get to the day, how do you even mess that up? 1,260 days. I mean, that seems pretty straightforward. Much more specific than a time, times, and half a time. If the connections here are correct, then here in chapter 12, that's what this angelic being is referring to. The 3.5 years during which there is great wrath, during which evil is allowed to run rampant. I'm not quite sure how else to say this. The Antichrist is given free rein. He's allowed to rule and to do what he wants over the earth within parameters. But it's a time of great distress for Israel, is the way the text puts that. And you see that in every one of these references we've looked at.
What, great distress for Israel? Or just, you see it in all the different references. What do they all have in common?
Yes, an evil being,
Okay.
Antichrist, beast, dragon. I mean, there's a lot of different ways. Well, and there's multiple evil beings in there too.
Okay.
But evil beings have reign over the earth, the holy city, the holy people. It's a time of great distress.
Okay.
In each one of these cases, and they're all that same 42 month.
Yeah.
1,260 time,
Ish.
time and half a time.
Okay. Reference. So you're saying it's all synonymous with.
It seems that way to me.
Okay.
Yeah. And so it seems like the angel's answer to this question, how long will it be, does not answer the question I would have wanted, how much time do we have before this stuff occurs? Instead, the question he answers is, the distress will go on for 3.5 years. This time of great distress.
Okay.
Do I have up here? I do, because I think this is connected as well. Daniel 9:27. He, and I would take this to be the Antichrist, will make a firm covenant with the many for 1 week. And in Daniel 9, this is the 70th week of Daniel. He's already previously in the chapter, he's talked about the 7 weeks and the 62 weeks, which is 69. After having said 70 weeks are appointed, he talks about the 7 and the 62, which leaves 1. And then we get that here in 9:27. He'll make a firm covenant with the many for a week, 1 week. But in the middle of the week, he'll put a stop to sacrifice and grain offering. And on the wing of abominations will come one who makes desolate, even until a complete destruction. One that is decreed is poured out on the one who makes desolate. I can't go into all of this, but in my opinion, this also ties into what we're talking about. The angel's answer, time times and half a time, 3.5 times, is the same thing as this middle of the week to the end of the week, which is 3.5 days.
Okay.
And would be 3.5 years as this prophecy is given to Daniel. So here he states in Daniel 9:27, he'll make a firm covenant. That's the thing that starts the tribulation period. Halfway through, he breaks the covenant, he stops sacrifice, and things get really bad.
Okay. So that would require there was a temple.
Yes.
Okay. And is that the main verse that requires a temple? I don't mean to.
Yeah. One of many.
Okay.
We have a number of, it can get a little confusing, rabbit trail, because we also have references to the one who makes desolate with regard to Antiochus Epiphanes. And he also stopped sacrifice. Well, that's historical for us.
Right.
Although it's clearly different than this, because this comes after the Messiah, and Antiochus Epiphanes was before the Messiah.
So the last time, did they offer sacrifices all the way until 70 AD when the temple was destroyed?
Oh man, that's good. That is really good. Birthday cake bash.
Yeah. Thank you, Gary.
Okay. He's sorry. No, it's really good. Well, the cookies are really good too.
Well, the cookie is just not sweet at all compared to this.
I got you that as the salty part.
The cookie is the salty part by comparison. That is too funny. That is too funny. Oh boy. Okay. Okay, Darren has a question. He says, what is the point of the oath? That's a good question.
The oath.
I presume he means the angel raising his hands toward heaven.
Uh-huh.
Why doesn't he just say what he's going to say here? Why does he swear on the name of God that it's only going to be 3.5 years? Because he doesn't do that for the rest of the prophecy.
Okay. So what's your opinion on that?
Well, if I put myself in that time period,
Mr. Darren, gotcha.
Darren got you. Thanks, Darren. You can only imagine the horrific character of this period. If you're if you're one of the holy people, and you're going through this, it's got to be overwhelming. My opinion is that this prophecy is given specifically for those people, and for them, it would be immensely encouraging to hear that it's not going to last longer than 3.5 years. In fact, the angel that gave the prophecy swore by the God of heaven that it's not going to last more than 3.5 years.
If this is that 3.5 year period.
Yeah. That's my best shot
Okay.
right now. So I think it's given for the encouragement of the people that go through it. That there is an end to it. It's going to look like, I think, the world is falling apart. And evil has taken control of everything. And it's an encouragement that that's not the end. Moving right along. Verse 8, as for me, I heard, but could not understand. So I said, my Lord, what will be the outcome of these events? The words are not difficult to understand what they mean as English.
Uh-huh.
Did you get my joke there? It wasn't actually English. We're reading it in English. Okay. Right. Well, I mean, you do have the Spanish here.
Yeah.
But
I just thought that you were saying it was simple, but it wasn't given to him to understand.
yeah. And I sense that we're still struggling with some of this too. Right?
Oh, look at the history of churches trying to figure this out in the 19th and 20th century.
Yeah. So I think it's not that I don't know what the words mean, it's that I still don't get the gist of what you're saying. I think we know a lot more than Daniel did because
Right.
of the New Testament text, but I
Right.
think we still struggle too.
Well, it's just like those who have ears, let them hear. When Jesus said that, and it was just not. He wasn't capable of understanding it, even though he heard it. Mm-hmm. That's what we get out of it.
Yeah. Well, the angel in verse 9 does not help him out. He said, "Go your way, Daniel, for these words are concealed and sealed up until the end time." Which sounds a lot like what he said in verse 4. Seal these words up. And here he's saying it is sealed up. That doesn't mean throw the book away and don't let anybody read it. Obviously, we have the book, and God wanted us to have the book.
Right.
Otherwise, he wouldn't have given the vision. But even though they're very available, they're not easy to understand.
So in verse 4 it says, "Seal the book until the end of time." That's different from the end time.
Thank you for asking that question. That's
Okay.
the New American Standard.
Okay.
The New American Standard at the end of verse 4 says, the end of time.
Okay.
What are they saying here in the end of verse 9?
Oh, until the end time.
Yes. The New American Standard is the only English version I was able to find. I looked at probably 15 of them, maybe closer to 20, software,
Okay.
that says the end of time in verse 4.
Really?
All the rest of them say something like the end of the age or the end of the epoch or something like that.
So it's like the Jehovah's Witnesses version of John 1:3.
Right.
Okay.
We have our own version.
Hey, God.
Now, here's the kicker. In the Hebrew, it's exactly the same at the end of verse 4 as it is at the end of verse 9. They're the exact same
Really?
words.
And it's the same Hebrew, Greek word or whatever?
Exact same.
I guess
it's
this
a
would be
couple
Hebrew,
of words
right?
in Hebrew, yeah, yeah. So you tell me, why does the New American Standard translate it two different ways?
Like the NIV, they're not from God. No, no,
Are you hating on the NAS? Oh man!
I'm just kidding.
If you want to do that with the not inspired version, you know, that was a bad joke. Yeah, okay. I'm glad you asked that though, because I think it's an important point. The end time, the end of time, are those the same thing? Well, I mean, you could take them as synonyms, but they also could be taken as very different ideas.
Yeah, end of time is more poetic. End time is a Christian response to something everybody's waiting on, but
Bang.
not going to come during their lifetime.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, the angel's response is basically, I'm not giving you any more interpretation here. The prophecy I've given you stands. That's what it is. And I know you can't understand it, and that's the way it's supposed to be. Seal it up. Go your way.
Why do we have it if it's to be concealed up till the end of time?
Another great question.
I've got more.
Yeah. Where are these coming from?
Cheat notes.
I think it's the happy unicorn drink. Gary, you've given him a little extra lube here or something. Your question.
Was it the little horn? Is that what they?
Your question. Why was it given to us if we're not supposed to
conceal
understand
these
it?
words and seal the book up until the end of time, or end time, depending on.
Analogy that I would give, there are numerous references in the Old Testament to the coming Messiah that in retrospect are very clear, but at the time were not well understood.
Very true. Like a lot of Isaiah, probably. And
Stuff in the Psalms.
Psalm 22 is a good one. But very clear afterward.
Yeah. And, you could ask, what's the point there? And I think it was significant that Jesus fulfilled these prophecies, and it's absolutely plain to see that in retrospect. But he wouldn't have been able to fulfill them had they not been given. And so it's almost like after the fact, it demonstrates God's work through history. And I think maybe that's what's going on here too. I think there's an encouraging, helpful aspect to the people that this is intended for, even more so than for us. The things that they will get from it, but in some ways that's only functional, that only works if it's given ahead of time. Some parts of it.
What are there? 400 or something like that? Different prophecies of Jesus?
Something like that. Yeah. Okay. Verse 10. How are we doing? We got a little bit of time left. I gotta quit in 45 minutes, right? Oh, I got plenty of time.
As you're led. I don't know if it's the Lord or Amy.
Well, as long as I don't run out of birthday cake bash, I'm going to be all right.
That is an interesting flavor.
I'm loving it.
Verse 10. Isn't that interesting how Gary came up and acted like he opened those? Did the tss, like he hadn't been drinking from them before?
Why does yours say COQ10? Is that a coquin?
Oh, that's that new coronavirus
I was wondering.
thing. Makes you feel. It's kind of the antidote. Now I don't know about yours. Yours says aminos. Well, those are
Okay.
acids and.
I like aminos.
There you go.
I guess.
As long as it's the proper one.
No, mine says COQ10 too. Mine is also fighting the virus.
Oh. I guess I'm not that special then.
Sorry.
All right.
I should have not even looked at that.
Yeah.
Verse 10. Many will be purged, purified, and refined, which, by the way, is verbiage we get in Revelation 2. But the wicked will act wickedly, and none of the wicked will understand. But those who have insight will understand. And I think that's kind of along the lines of what we've been talking about. People in that period will get this. They'll understand stuff that Daniel couldn't. Those who
have been given the ability.
Yeah, those who have insight. They're contrasted with the wicked, so I would assume they kind of refer to the righteous, those who have insight.
Let's see. That one goes back to Daniel 7:25, and he will speak out against the Most High and wear down the saints of the Highest One, and he will intend to make alterations, and they will be given into his hand for a time and a half. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Wow. I forgot to keep up with my slides here.
Oh.
But I guess that's pretty self-explanatory as far as the days and the times and stuff. Sorry about that. I should have been paying attention. I'm going to skip past the Roman calendar for now. Just the Romans are a little later period, but they kept calendars as well. They counted from the founding of Rome forward.
Romulus and Remus
with Julius Caesar. That's
okay.
Kinda,
maybe they're fictitious.
Oh no, yeah, no, that's.
But
Yep. Again, a Roman statue, Titus, here with a rolled up scroll representing this idea of sealed up and concealed. You can't read it when it's rolled up. Which we get in Revelation 2.
Titus?
The Roman Emperor Titus. Yeah, that's who the statue is. This is just a shot of his hand.
Different from the general in 70 AD that sacked Jerusalem?
Same guy.
Is it?
He only ruled for, like 79 to 81 or something. It wasn't very long that he was actually the emperor, but he was the general.
Right, okay,
Father
cool.
Vespasian was the guy that was emperor when he sacked Jerusalem.
You're handy.
Okay.
You're handy.
Handy to have around.
Yeah.
There's a scroll with this is a modern replica. Although they have found some scrolls like this from almost as far back as the time of Daniel, not quite, 4th century BC, that have multiple. In fact, they found one that's got 7 seals on it. It's in pretty bad shape.
Are those 3 seals on top of that one?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, tie a string around it, and then on the knot, they place a little lump of clay, push a seal into it that's got some letters or picture or something on it. And it makes it tamper-proof. You can tell if somebody's gotten into it or not.
So they just do it to the rope, or they do it into the paper too?
Both, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I think it'd be
sliding right off. Yeah. No, often
I'd probably got killed.
Often these things perished in fire, which would absolutely destroy the papyrus, but it would bake the seal, harden it into ceramic.
Oh.
And if you flip it over on the backside,
Cool.
you can see the papyrus on it and the little knot from the string. So I didn't bring any pictures of those, but could do that at some point if you want to. There's some ancient seals from the Wadi Dahlia where they actually found a scroll. The scroll has since been opened up and unwound, but that had seven seals on it. It's kind of cool. Okay. Many will purify themselves, be purged, refined, here in verse 10, but the wicked will act wickedly. Purify themselves, make themselves white. That's verbiage we're familiar with. Probably the best example in our day and age of wearing white as a sign of purity would be, that was a question.
Oh.
Man, that's good.
The only thing I think about is the goat they sent out, and when the goat died, the crimson turned white.
Sorry, Julie. I'll help him out. It's a bride that wears white.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
See? Didn't you do that at your wedding? Yeah. I thought maybe you were going to say infant baptism, the little baby gown. That's just as well that you didn't. Okay. Well, okay, so be refined, some gold there.
Ooh.
Those who have insight will understand. Hebrew scroll, maybe a little bit similar to what Daniel was written down on. Interesting statement here in verse 11. From the time that the regular sacrifice is abolished and the abomination of desolation is set up, there will be 1,290 days. And we have almost exactly the same verbiage in chapter 11. Forces from him will arise, desecrate the sanctuary fortress, do away with the regular sacrifice, set up the abomination of desolation. That, in Daniel 11:31, is talking about Antiochus Epiphanes. But this is not. How do we know that? We'll look at Daniel chapter 9, 26 and 27. After the 62 weeks, which followed 7 weeks, the Messiah will be cut off and have nothing. The people of the prince who is to come will destroy the city and the sanctuary. Its end will come with a flood. Even to the end there will be war. Desolations are determined. He will make a firm covenant with the many for a week, but in the middle of the week he'll put a stop to sacrifice and grain offering. And on the wing of abominations will come one that makes desolate, even until a complete destruction, that one that is decreed, is poured out on the one who makes desolate. So this abomination, desolation verbiage has already been used twice by Daniel, once with reference to end times, post-Messiah, at least. Mm-hmm. The other with reference to Antiochus Epiphanes. And I would suggest this one clearly must be not Antiochus Epiphanes, but post-Messiah. It's that one to which he refers here. The temple, this is actually a model of the temple built by Herod the Great, so we refer to it as the second temple. The large sacrificial altar there in the courtyard on the east side of the temple. You can see
Did Herod build it first or just add on?
He rebuilt it. Nehemiah
Right.
had come in and built Ezra. Nehemiah
Right.
rebuilt
The wall
the temple and the city wall. That stood until the days of Herod. Herod wanted to do something for the Jewish population and also increase his own name. And so he wanted to rebuild the temple.
Okay.
They were understandably nervous about that. Herod the Great was half Jewish, half Idumean.
Might as well be a Samaritan.
And so, right? And so Herod actually collected all of the material necessary to construct it and
It's like
set it
David.
there.
Okay.
Although he wasn't the new David.
Okay.
And then they allowed him to do it. Because they didn't want him tearing it down and then not rebuilding, right?
Right.
But he brought all the blocks and the timber and the precious metals
Okay.
and had him set there. And then they allowed him to take down the old one and put up. But they still refer to it as the second temple.
Okay.
Even though it's in some ways kind of the third. Okay. 1,290 days. So this is a kind of a layout of the tribulation, the 70th week, however you want to refer to it, the 7 years of the tribulation there. And we have read a number of times now that this second half is 1,260 days, right?
Right. They're adding a month, or is that
Yeah,
a real
exactly.
calendar?
Exactly. Yeah, so they're adding a month, another 30 days to the end.
A 30-day month.
What's that about? Well, hang on, because he has another statement here. I think I want to actually flip my page. I want to save my cookie crumbs.
You've eaten all the outer part of your cookie.
That's just the way it crumbled.
Okay.
Verse 12, he goes on to say, how blessed is he who keeps waiting and attains to the 1,335 days. So we had a 3.5 year period, 1260. Then in
Okay.
verse 11, he goes 1290,
And now he's at 13.
and now he goes 1335, which is another 45 days, month and a half past the 1290.
So you're wanting me to say, what's that about?
Well, thank you very much. Well, clearly here,
Clearly.
he does not give us the answer to that question. I can't just point to the text and say, well, John, you should have read ahead.
Obviously.
Yeah. One of the things that happens here is the judgment of the sheep and the goats. That's the way Jesus describes it in the book of Matthew.
Okay.
And I think, no, I don't either. Okay, I'm just going to have to read that to you. I won't read you the whole thing. Give me just a second.
You make a lot less noise with your page turning.
I'm very quiet. 25, 31. I'm going to skip through some of this, but when the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, then he will sit on his glorious throne, and the nations will be gathered before him. He'll separate them from one another, as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. He'll put the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. And to those on his right, he'll say, "Come, you are blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world." And then he goes through and describes for them, I was hungry and you fed me, I was naked and you clothed me, these kinds of things. And they'll say, when did that happen? And he'll say, you did it to the least of these.
Was that your impression of how it sounded when they asked that?
No, not quite. I was, okay. And then to the others, the so-called goats, he does the same thing. And let me skip toward the end. He says, you didn't take care of the least of these, and so you didn't do them for me. To the extent in verse 45 that you didn't do it to them, you didn't do it to me, these will go away into eternal punishment, but the righteous into eternal life. So there he separates the righteous from the unrighteous. Mm-hmm. The righteous go into his kingdom, and the unrighteous, and there's no mention of a resurrection here. It's just gathering all the nations.
Okay.
And so a lot of scholars think that happens here right after the second coming of Christ, at the start of the millennium period, the millennial reign of Christ.
Yeah.
That would take a little bit of time. That's one of the things that goes on here between the coming of Christ, the ending of the sinful reign of the Antichrist, and the beginning of his rule, his personal rule, with a rod of iron. There's a bunch of different ways it's described, but and so that's my best shot at this. Is that's what this. If you make it through this time period, this judgment, this sheep and the goats differentiation, you are blessed, because it's only the righteous that make it through that and enter the kingdom over which Christ himself rules.
So the ones who believe that Christ is theirs versus the ones who, I'm not that bad.
Yeah, or man, in that time period, I mean, they're the ones taking the mark of the beast. They're all in. I mean, they're forced to choose. Mm-hmm. Whatever that mark is, you take it. You align yourself with the beast, or you align yourself with God. It's that. Good stuff. I gotta keep Ezekiel mentioned something that I think is
I got some
probably
lighter
the same.
fluid out there if you want to drink.
It's actually good. It's like birthday cake in liquid form. Okay, verse 13 is the last one here. As for you, go your way to the end, then you will enter into rest and rise again for your allotted portion at the end of the age.
End of the age, that's worded like that differently. Okay. Is that end time too? Just like the other, or no?
It's really similar. It's not quite the same verbiage.
Okay.
But enter into rest. Death is often spoken of that way, at least for God's people. That's common in both Old and New Testament, and I'm quite sure that that's what is intended here, especially given the context that he's gonna stand again and receive his inheritance. So, again, it doesn't use the word here, resurrection, but I don't know quite how else you would take that. You're gonna rest, sleep.
The rise again.
And then and it's woodenly stand up.
Mm-hmm.
Go your way to the end. A winter shot there at Pisidian Antioch, which in our calendar is the end of the year. You see what I did there?
Oh,
Winter time.
okay.
It's symbolic.
Thank you.
Okay. And then a cemetery.
That's also in time, symbolic.
I'm about out of time. Yes, this is on Mount Zion,
Ooh.
right by the now it's Jerusalem University College. There's a guy buried there who's Egyptologist Sir Flinders Petrie, late 1800s.
Okay.
Egyptology.
Study of Egypt.
Dug in Israel too. But he's buried there without his head. Because when he died, he considered himself smarter than anybody else. And he thought it had something to do with his brain. And if they could study his brain, they could figure out why he was so smart. So he decided that when he died, his head would be shipped back to Britain. And they could dissect it and figure out why he was so smart.
I didn't freeze it like Ted Williams or
No,
L. Ron Hubbard.
he wasn't thinking he'd come back. But he donated to science, so only his body is buried in that cemetery.
Huh.
That was a rabbit trail.
That's pretty interesting, though.
Cordy, we need a dabbing bunny for a rabbit trail sign. Okay. Daniel's traditional tomb. Okay. I'm just going to go ahead and...
Is it his traditional tomb? Where's that? Jerusalem?
Yes. In Susa.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. A little cone-shaped thing. I don't think there's any veracity to it. Tourist trap. Okay. 3 points to ponder here. First one, God revealed this vision to Daniel, but didn't allow him to understand a lot of it. I mean, Daniel himself says as much. Those are kind of on there. He's allowed us to understand more of it, but
Really?
I think more than Daniel did.
Okay.
Well, okay, Daniel.
Well, I know we have
the whole king of the north, king of the south
yeah,
thing.
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, we get that now, but that was still future for him. So, but yeah, I mean, this stuff. There's a lot here
Oh,
we don't understand still.
yes.
Yeah. And it's my opinion that complete understanding won't come until that time comes.
So we can look back and go, oh, yeah.
Of course.
Makes sense now.
Duh. Yeah. Second one, big picture. Daniel's reassured that God brings to pass what he wants at the time he wants. I think if you step away from this for a little bit, how can you miss that? That's a message this angel is telling him.
It's kind of like the one guy, the king hides himself as one of the soldiers, and just one arrow comes up
Yep.
and kills him.
Ahab, right through the little crevice and hits his day order or whatever. Yeah. Yep.
God doesn't miss.
And it's easy to miss that fact in times of stress and distress and things are not going well. It's easy to miss the fact. And I think that's a big picture thing to keep in mind here. And finally, Daniel's reassured that in the end, God will save and richly reward his people. That comes out a couple times here. They'll be refined and purged, which doesn't sound like fun, but they will not be abandoned by God. Even though one could think that.
So you're talking about Israel, or
Yeah.
the Jewish nation.
Well, and whoever it is that goes through this time period.
Okay.
And
So believers.
yeah, coming coming from
Okay.
the book of Revelation, I think that there are Gentiles in there too that join themselves with God's people.
Okay.
I think God's people, the focus is largely on Israel at that point. But I do think there are lots of Gentiles that join in with them too.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, God's people will go through a time of stress and distress, but he won't abandon them, even though it may feel somewhat like that during that period. But God will not only save them, but he will reward them, give them good things, give them an inheritance, to shine like stars.
To those he loves.
Yeah, his people. Yeah. We haven't even hit an hour yet. So I think I'm going to go ahead and jump into, what was it? Hosea, is that the book that comes next?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's a
Let's just go ahead and tackle
bro-
chapter
brothel
1
at
here.
home.
You've already read this book. Okay. So Hosea chapter 1,
Yes, it's very
verse 1.
very happy book.
Not really. We're done. I am planning next week, well, the next 2 weeks, to do review. I want to do one lesson review of the first 6 chapters, which is mostly narrative, historical, and then 1 week review of the prophecy chapters 7 to 12, and just kind of step back. What are some lessons, big picture stuff that we learned from this? And we've been through it now, going through it for like a year, whatever. Probably forgotten half of what, 2/3 of what, 3/4 of what we studied. 90%.
Haman. Haman.
Haman.
Guy.
That was a different book. That was a different book, John. Haman was in the book of Esther.
Oh, whoops.
Yeah, that's all right. It's all right.
Guys, what if I just got that thrown out?
Okay,
That's embarrassing.
that's all right. It's been a long time, and it's my fault. But I'm gonna quit
That's not
before
your
we
fault.
hit
It's not your fault.
an hour here. So
I was doing so well on Hosea.
yeah, I've been taking you all over the place. Good enough. Well, let me close this in a word of prayer. Lord, thanks for giving us this book and these visions. There is material in here that we acknowledge we don't understand, but we see your hand at work. We see the big picture, that you are the one to whom everyone answers, will answer. Things happen according to your timetable, and when you see fit, help us to rest in that. I pray that we would be faithful servants of yours, following you. That you would find us busy about your work when you return, and we ask for your strength as we resolve to do that. I ask for your blessing on each one of us this week, and again, help us to be about your business. In your name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
I'm gonna have to get a case of this stuff. It's good.
Want to taste a unicorn?
I would like to. Does it have a unicorn? It doesn't have a unicorn on it. Rainbow unicorn. Seriously. Oh man, that's like bubble gum or something. Strawberry. Bubblegum strawberry unicorn. It's addictive, isn't it?
I don't know if addictive is the right word.
Yeah, it is. It's birthday cake.
Man, I can't believe I can't put my. Of course, I just threw out Haman in the middle of this.
I think I need to go run around the building. I just got a lot of energy.
That would be quite a race between us.
You got your running shoes on, I hope. Okay, man.
And that's
That hour went fast.
yeah.
I don't know what was happening.
Oh my, well, since they've run past yet again this morning, and I'm ready to go, we're going to take a 7 to 10 minute break here. In fact, let's just plan we will start our live stream at 10:25 for worship service this morning. So thanks for joining us, and thanks for joining Pastor Kris and John for Sunday morning cartoons.